Welcome to Yarn in the Barn. Sean O'Leary is my name, and usually every morning I tell stories and check in with my herd of goats around 20 past 8, sometimes 8 a.m., but usually around 20 past 8. But then on a Saturday from around 11 a.m., I check in a bit longer, tell you about the week I've had, and usually tell a kind of a longer story, a bit more convoluted, I suppose the word is. So I hope everybody is well. This morning I'm a little bit out of breath because I fell back to sleep after doing all the goats and everything and having breakfast. I just closed my eyes for a few minutes and there was a big rush on to get down, but I'm here. So I hope everybody is well. We have beautiful sunshine. Not only sunshine, but you have the heat of the summer now, which is fantastic. And it just gives a great sense of summer and growth, and I wouldn't say 24-hour sunshine, but 22-hour sunshine. So everybody is here. Hold on. Hello. Ooh. Now, there is everyone. There we go. You had a look at the sky there for a sec. Oh my goodness. This heat is so beautiful. So Honey is looking after Dinah. Yes, Rosemary. You were saying you didn't hear about Dinah. Dinah's Honey's little girl. And I have to figure out what to call people who watch the broadcasts and like the goats and the stories and stuff. I must figure out what you want to be called. My fans, my family, I suppose, in a way, or my online family would be a nice one, I think. Yes. Dinah rang up anyway, just to say, and it was a great time because over the last few weeks, I haven't felt 100% sure of myself because I had so much administration and paperwork to do that I kept doubting myself. And of course, I'm no good at it anyway, but I just had to do it for work. So I kept just feeling bad about myself. And one day, Dinah rang just to say how wonderful she thought everything was. And it was lovely. It really was lovely. So, so I called Honey's daughter, Dinah. And I don't know if you can see, but there's Margot looking very majestical, looking like the mother of Puck. Yeah, you're looking like the mother of Puck there, sitting down watching everything. Of course, people forget goats love heights. So they're all relaxed there. Go over here. I settled down. So it was an amazing week. I got all that administration work done, which means my mind is kind of free to be creative again, which is fantastic. And there's a lot of things to be done in that sector of my brain. But I can also relax and feel good about myself again. Look at this. Look who I just strolled upon. There's Drolene. Drolene, 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 Drolene. Yeah, and there's everybody. Everybody's lazing out. The heat now is fantastic. They were down into a new field last night, full of grass, full of beautiful, lovely grass. But again, they'll probably have loose bottoms for a bit. The new grass seems to do that. So there's Joy and Bliss. There has been some couple were interested in taking Joy and Bliss, which I'd be kind of sad, but at the same time, I just can't look after this many and more coming on next year. I have to really start, working it out, as the man says. But I'd like to keep one, so we'll see. Wouldn't send the other off on its own now. I'd send somebody else with it. You know, we could see. So there we go. Look, you can nearly hear the sunshine. You can hear the heat because it's so calm. It's a bit like after it snows. That wonderful, wonderful silence. Except for the gidlings. That's Ruby. Are you coming over, Ruby? No, she's sitting down. She's sitting down. Yeah, everybody's a little bit exhausted. So, the whole thing of the week, the whole big excitement of the week, we were on television. Now, again, another thing, I'm so bad. We have to get a name for the herd. I've often referred to it as the happy herd, but I want a big kind of I used to want to call it Spiral Heart or Celtic Heart or Celtic Spiral or the Spiral Herd or the Triskel Herd or something. What do you think, Dick? What do you think? What would you like to be called? Well, anyway, this herd, we were on television and it was great. My neighbours, John and Helen, who were fantastic, collected. I went over around 11:45 at night after having my folders finished. And hello, Driocht. Look, a beautiful Driocht. I wish I could be combing Driocht every day to get all those little bits out of her. Yes. So I called over and 12 o'clock we headed off. Hello, Driocht. You see Driocht, and Driocht and Joy get on fairly well. So Driocht will have to be sheared. I don't think this year, I think next year. We'll have to wait and see. Yes, Dick. Oh, who's? Don't be like that now, Joy. So, the girls are here eating. So yes, so we headed off then around 12 o'clock. We came down here. We got Jessie. Jessie was a little bit like, oh my God, you're leaving me. I'm going. Oh no. So I came down then for Ruby Wax and for Silky. And when I came up then, Jessie couldn't believe it that I was going with her. She was like, where are we going? It had gone from all sad to kind of, we're on a trip. And it was fantastic. We drove to the Barack Obama Plaza in Moneygall, stopped off there for a little while and headed off again. And we were in Dublin for about 5:30. And Ireland AM, I must admit, they must have gathered all the morning people of the world to work on the programme because everybody was just so calm, so nice, so pleasant, so friendly. It was great. Oh, there we go. It was really nice. Everybody was just so, and the presenters were, I mean, they had their job to do. They were rushing in and they were rushing out. And the man, I think, like the coordinator, he had to be on time and everything had to be correct and everything. But they still had time to laugh and to chat and to banter in between. It was great. As I say, it was like every morning person in the world works in the programme. Ah, look at the Ruby. Look at the Rubes. Hello, Ruby. How are you? You're very quiet. Will you say hello to people? Will you say hello? Yeah? So Ruby was on. Silky was on. She's up with Honey there now. And Jessie. So I was going to milk Jessie, but your man, the coordinator, said to me, so he said, are we ready to go milking? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I started milking Jessie like a good fella. And then he said, take it easy there now. This is just a rehearsal. So then I had to wait again. But as my father said, milky cow is like a priest saying mass. Once you start, it can't stop. It has to keep going to the end. So she wouldn't really let you milk her again. So, but she was very good. I mean, I was very good. I just kept my patience and I realised that there's no point in getting cross or fed up. You know, in my head there was a temptation to get all heading to work now, so I'll watch later. Have a great day. Oh, thanks, Marianne, and have a lovely day yourself now, and I hope you're well. And I will get the story up because it's a long, convoluting one. And it was really, maybe today might be just the story of the television, but it was really, it was great. And they came out then and they fed Ruby and they fed Silky, and they were mad about them and everything. And we did all that. They kind of mentioned that I could nearly be back again sometime, which was lovely. And we hopped into the van and we were home for about 3 and I had to go back working at my folders and my paperwork and my administration, and that was sent in the next day. Yes. So, and we also had a lovely visit from Saoirse and her mom Dee. Saoirse looked after the goats last year, and Dee helped her as well, but Saoirse was the milker. And oh my God, she was fantastic. She was one of these people that just was born to do this job. And she kept, I mean, as well, she kept calling over for evenings for a week beforehand. So she was like an apprentice. And it's so sad that that idea of working and learning from somebody who knows the job is gone out. It's all these Mickey Uppy masters and PhDs that are just kind of, again, more administrative than actually learning, you know. But I think anyway. So Saoirse called over to see Saoirse, who's called after her, Nettle's little girl, and it was great. But it got me thinking of some of the stories of people who've looked after the goats before. I had one person who rang up in a terrible panic, and it was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I fed the brown goat in the black bucket and the white goat in the yellow bucket. And at the time I saw you doing it, you fed the brown goat in the yellow bucket and the black bucket to the white goat. And I was like, but it's the same food, isn't it? And they're, oh yeah, it's the same food. So I was like, it doesn't really, if they're eating it, it's fine. And then just by chance, I asked something else and she said, oh yeah, they're eating the rhododendron. I said, the rhododendron is poison. I told you that. Goats can't eat the rhododendron. She said, oh, I heard it was something else. I said, it doesn't matter what you heard. I'm telling you. So I was again kind of like the real emergency was nothing, but the nothing was a real emergency with people. And again, it's like that. People just have to learn. And that's, I think apprenticeships are good like that, where you learn from experience. What do you think? Yes. So that was all right. And then I had another person who was going to look after the goats. I didn't know what I was doing. And then she couldn't look after the goats. Then she got other people to look after the goats. And those people brought other people to look after the goats. And now I'm online every 2 minutes telling you everything that happened. But I'm kind of a private person. And so when I came back, there'd been about 40 people down trying to help feed the goats because this one couldn't do it. And if she'd said it, I could have got somebody else. But there's been it's hard to get a good old goat herd. So Saoirse was a blessing, but she's staying in Dublin for the summer. So we'll have to go looking again. But it was great. It was really great to see Dee and Saoirse and for them to see all this year's crop, but then to meet old friends again as well. And I think the goats know, their goats are so clever. They really do remember people. Now, the Ireland AM, there's terrible crack about the Ireland AM because the piece, it was fantastic. It's on their app. I can see it on their app. I can't take it out to share it. Now, somebody did share it, and she's telling everybody that you can see it, but nobody can see it. It's when you press on it, it says download the app. So unless you have the app, and if you have the app, you can watch it anyway. So I do think if you're in Ireland, you need to download the map. I think the app. But if you're outside Ireland, I'm not too sure. I might contact the girl because there's so many people asking, is there any way we could somehow share it or something? Because I suppose they want to send people to their app to get the traffic to watch it. And is there kind of an international? What do you think, Ruby? But it would be great. But it was lovely. It was great. I mean, I do like being in front of the camera. I do like being on television, so I don't get nervous really. And I try not to have an agenda of what I want to talk about. The way some people just, and I have 46 goats and I give milk, and I just chat to the people and just let them kind of lead the conversation, just tell them what they want to know. And if it's much easier then, it comes across really well. Look at this for crack. Ruby just wants to be on camera. Ruby's like, I have something to say. Ruby, can you believe it? I was wondering what the goats must have thought of it. They must have been like, that it was like being taken away. You know, people, there's stories before of people who'd be walking home at night and next thing they were in taken away by the fairies. That's what you must have thought of television, because they were like, they were going to bed, then they went moving in a very, very comfortable, because I'd loads of duvets in the van for them, and then they were in this place and it was all very lovely and the people were gorgeous, and then we went moving again and we were home. So that sounds like being taken away with the fairies. Yes. But it was lovely. So it was great. So here's some more television appearances and it was great spreading the word again. I think that's a lot of it as well. That wisdom that I've got since I'm 50. Before, you'll be trying to publicize something, but when you have a good message, and the message with the stories and showing about the goats, it's all about joy and feeling good and escaping the craziness of the world out there and sharing all the things I love and the things that make me happy, in the hope that I make others happy. You know, I better stop now because I'll be blubbering. So, and I think that's it. And when the message is good, it's very easy to share that. People want to share it and want to hear about it. Yes, they do. They do. So the story is all about a young man, a young shepherd, and he heard there was a competition to marry the king's daughter. And he thought this is a great way he could become king, and if the princess liked him, they could have a great life together. So he headed off anyway to the king, and he said, I would like to marry your daughter. And the king said, now come out here and I'll show you something. And he said, look here now, there is 12 spikes here in the garden, and there's 11 heads up in the spikes. And these are the spikes of the men who have tried to win the hand of my daughter and failed. So you can try, but you could very well end up being the 12th head here on the spike. Your man was saying, I'll go for it. I'll give it a try. Well, the king said, well, there's a fellow over the mountain there, and his name is the Grúdach Gara. And he's always been laughing. And 'twas a great sense. Everybody was in great form when they heard the Grúdach Gara laughing. Ag Gara in Irish is laughing. So 'twas always great when the Grúdach Gara was laughing and people were in great form. But suddenly he stopped laughing. And people have become sad because they don't hear him laughing anymore. He had such a bellow of a laugh inside in the valley, 'twould carry all over the place. So the young shepherd said, I'll try it. I'll go off and give me a year and a day, and I'll try to find out. So he went off searching, and he went this way and he went that way. And he was talking to people and he was asking questions. And anyway, he found out where the Grúdach Gara lived, and he knocked at the door. And he said he wouldn't be so Irish now as to ask him straight out, why aren't you laughing anymore? He said, I'm here. I'd like to be a servant boy, an apprentice for a year at least, and I'm a very good worker. So the Grúdach Gara said, this is great. Come on in. And he said, your job now is I have 12 golden goats and a puck with no horns. That's a little bit like Captain and Grace. I haven't forgotten that video about what goats have horns and not. So I have 12 golden goats and I have a puck without horns, and take him off eating and bring him back in the evening and we'll milk him. So the goat boy took the goats away, and he went over and he went right out to the edge of the Grúdach Gara's land. And there was a huge big wall up there and an electric fence on the top. I'd say Mike Sheehan had did the wiring. It was very hard to get in. But if it was, the goat herd knocked in the wiring, and didn't he leave the goats in next door? Jeez, that's a tough thing to be doing now. And 'twas all right, and there was a beautiful apple tree there, and he climbed up, and he was eating the lovely apples, and the sour ones he was throwing down, and the goats were eating those. They liked the sour apples. And this was going on anyway all day, and he said, I better go back now. Next thing, he heard an awful thud, an awful noise coming through the forest, and he could hear all the trees bending and swishing, and the first coming, and 'twas a giant. And the giant said, Who's this? How dare you break into my land and have these goats eating my fine grass? Well, if he did, the goatherd looked at him and said, I don't like the look of you. And they went at it fighting. And the giant was throwing huge, big thumps. He was like a WWF wrestler. And the little goatherd, he was fighting back as well. He wouldn't take it as much. And 'twas going on for a good hour or two. And the giant was winning. And the little goatherd then thought of his parents. He said, I'll never see him again if I let him take over now. And I have a chance of winning the Princess of Ireland's hand in marriage. I'm not going to go down. And he gave him one strike, and he put the giant down into the ground. And he gave him another strike, and he put him up to his waist. And he gave him another strike, and he was up to his shoulders inside in the earth. And he got the sword. He got the giant sword, and he lopped off the head of the giant. Well, he brought the goats. He got the goats back to the Grúdach Garda, and the Grúdach said, "Fine, yeah." She said, "Couldn't have enough buckets for all the milk." There was churns. They were putting the milk into buckets, and they were emptying out everything, trying to put the milk in there. They had put it everywhere. They even had to sew bags trying to put the milk in there. Yeah. So the next morning, the goatherd headed off again with the goats, and he passed where the giant was, and he said, "You know something?" He got out a penknife and he cut off the tongue of the giant's head, and he went off to the end of the giant's land. And there was more wiring, and it was tough wiring. Nobody could get through it. And he said, But he got through it, and he pushed it down, and he put the goats in there, the 12 golden goats and the puck with no horns, he put in there, and they were eating away. And there was a nice little hazel tree inside there. And there was hazelnuts, and he was eating away, and anything he didn't like, he threw down, and the goats were eating it. And they spent a great day there until at the end, he said, "Come on now, goats, we better head back. We have a long journey home." Next thing, there was fierce fuss again, and he could hear all the trees getting out of the way, and screaming and roaring and going on. And next thing, who was it but a two-headed giant? And he said, "How dare you? You break into my brother's land and you kill him, and here you are in my land, you cheeky gimp." And he said, I don't like the look of you." And they started fighting, and they fought for about an hour and a half, and 'twas going on blow for blow, and the young fellow was nearly passing out, and he said, "No, I'm not going to go down today. I'm going to marry the King's daughter of Ireland, and I'm going to go home and see my mother and father." And if he did, he drove a clout on the giant and he put him into the ground. And he drove him another clout and he put him into the waist, up to the waist. And he gave him another clout and he had him up to the shoulders. And he got his sword and he lopped the two heads off. And he got his penknife this time and took the two heads, or took the two tongues out of the giant's heads. Well, he brought the goats home to the Grúdach. And the Grúdach said, "My God, fair play, look at the others on them." And they had a fierce time. They were borrowing. They had to go into Mr. Price and get a load of plastic boxes, trying to fill all the milk, trying to keep all the milk that the goats were producing. "Oh," he said, "this is great altogether. But did you find any?" So that was all right. He went off. And the third day he went off, he didn't realize, but another prince had arrived. And he wanted to the king, and he wanted to marry the Princess of Ireland. He wanted to marry his daughter. And the king said, "There was a fella here now, and he's gone off, but I suppose he's dead. He didn't come back, but I suppose something happened to him. But be careful now, Ian, because your head could be the 12th head on the spike here." And the prince said, "No, I'll go off." So he went off, and he found the house of the Grúdach Garda, and he asked, could he be in service? And he went off anyway, and there he found the giant, and the giant's head thrown down on the ground. He said. And he went on further, and he saw the two heads on the ground. He said. So he gathered the giants up, the heads up, and he had a wheelbarrow, and he brought him home in a wheelbarrow to the King of Ireland, and he said, "Now look at all the giants I've killed. I should marry your daughter." He said, "You're halfway there, but there's another giant's heads you have to collect." And so he went off again. And meanwhile, the goatherd had gone off with the 12 goats and the puck with no horns. And they went in to the third giant's land. They broke in again, and there was a plum tree there. and he was eating beautiful plums, and he was throwing down plums for the goats to eat, and everything was great until coming to the close of day. He heard the fish and the racket coming, and there was fierce racket this time because this fella had 3 heads and they didn't get on because there was one fella saying, "Hold on, slow down, you're running too fast." And the other fella said, "We're not going fast enough." And the other fella said, "Will you shut up, the two of you?" And they were all fighting with each other anyway, and they arrived. And they said, "You're some Bashdoon for one Bashdoon. You've killed our 2 brothers and you've cut off their heads, and you insulted them by letting them goats of the Gruach Gora eat the fine grass. Well, you won't survive breaking into this land." And they went fighting, and the goatherd went at it, and he was nearly finished in the 3 heads, and they were fighting, and they were giving out at the same time, and they were wearing. Oh, they were giving out the whole time to each other. But eventually the goatherd thought about his parents, he thought about the Princess of Ireland, and he said, "Now we'll get it all back." And he gave the giant a strike on one head, and he went down to his ankles. And he gave him a strike on the other head, and he went up to the waist. And he gave him a strike on the third head, and he was stuck up to the shoulders in the earth. And he got the sword, and he cut off the 3 heads, and he picked out his penknife, and he cut off the 3 tongues. And he kept the tongues in his pocket, like the others. And he went home to the Gruach Gora. Well, who was watching him? Only the other prince. And he gathered up the 3 heads, and he went back to the King of Ireland. So the goats now, they had as much milk that they had to build a huge big shed, and they had to fill it with stainless steel and plastic, and they had to fill it up with milk. It was like the EU now with the milk lake. So the Gruach Gora was sitting there, and the goatherd said, "Would you ever tell me, why did you stop laughing?" Oh, the Gruach Gora said, "I can't tell you. 'Tis so sad." And the goatherd said, "But look at all the milk I've got you. You can see I'm a tough lad. I might be able to help you." So the Gruach Gora started telling him anyway. He said, "I had 12 sons, and we'd be here every evening playing cards on this fine big table that I'm talking to you now. And 'twas great crack we had until a wizard hare, a magic hare, came in, and he went to the toilet on top of the table, and he ruined all the cards and everything, and he ran away. Well, the next night he came in again, and we got new cards, and we washed down the table, and if we did, he defiled the table again. Well, we were ready for him. We chased him. We chased him up a mountain. We chased him down a hill. We chased him over the valleys, and we chased him round again. And they ended up in this huge big castle, and they went in, and the hare was sitting down by the fire, and his master, a Fomorian prince, was sitting there. And the Fomorian prince had 12 daughters, and they were all darning socks in the corner. And the 12 princes were looking, and they said, "Very nice." And so there was a big pot, and there was a load of herons inside in it cooking. And your man came out, the evil Fomorian prince came out, and he said, "Would you like wooden pike or a steel pike?" Oh, the Gruach Gora said, "I'd take a steel pike off you." He said, "All right, you can have the steel pike. Get your dinner now out of it." And he put the steel pike in, and he could hardly get any bit of the heron at all. Look at this now, trying to eat my beard. Oh, Lord God, did you ever hear the likes of it? You fed well. You fed well. And the evil Fomorian prince put his wooden pike in, and he got a load of the heron out, and he threw it over to the daughters, and they were all eating it, and whatever bones they had, they were throwing it at the Gruach Gora and his 12 sons, almost making fun of them. Well, that went out, and that night did the evil Fomorian prince take the heads off the 12 sons, and he sent the Gruach Gora home. And he said, "Since then, I haven't laughed one bit." Well, the goatherd went off, and he said, "I'll try it." And he went off, and he found the hare, and the hare went to the toilet again, and he said, "I know you." And he ran after the hare, up over the valleys, down the mountains, through the hills, and over again, and he came to the house. Well, if he was inside, there was the Fomorian prince and the big pot of herons and the 12 daughters, and they're sewing the socks, darning the socks. And he said, "Who goes there?" And he said, "I'm here to have a bit of dinner." And he said, do you want the iron pike or do you want the wooden pike? He said, I'll take the wooden pike. And by God, did he get all the herons out. And if he did, he started throwing them at the daughters and they were screaming. And he caught one of them and he said to the man, now, if you want to see your daughters again, you better get me the Grúdach Gara's sons. Oh, he said, right. All right. So he went back in and he got all the Grúdach sons alive again. He put the heads back on them because he was so magical he was able to do that. And he sent them out. So the goat herd was delighted to see this. He got home, he got to the Grúdach Gara. He said, they're your sons. And when the Grúdach Gara heard it, he started laughing. He was delighted. Oh, he said, that's great altogether. But the only thing is that the King of Ireland's daughter will be married the next day once the Grúdach Gara starts laughing. So I have to make my way home. And the Grúdach said, I'll go with you to explain everything and my sons will go with you. So they all hopped on their horses and they headed off and they were heading towards the palace. And of course, the prince that had the giant's heads, he was there and he said, I'm going to marry the king's daughter. And the king said, well, you haven't told me how the Grúdach Gara stopped laughing. And he said, it doesn't matter now because as you just heard, he's laughing. So if he's laughing again, it doesn't matter. I'm the fella that sorted it out. I have the giant's heads. And he was just saying this when who broke in the door? But the goat heard the Grúdach Gara and the 12 sons. And he said, stop the wedding. I'm the man that sorted it all out. I'm the one that stopped the Grúdach or started the Grúdach Gara laughing again. And I killed all those giants. And the Grúdach Gara said, 'tis true. He helped me out and I didn't want to tell him at all, but he got my sons back and I'm delighted. And he gave a big roar of laughing and they all started laughing. And the king said, but sure, look at this prince here. Didn't he bring back all the giants' heads? And the goat herd said, I'll show you. And what did he pull out of his pocket? Only all the tongues. And he slid them into all the mounts of the giants' heads. And they all fitted. And he married the Princess of Ireland. And they had a great time. And they lived happily ever after. Yes. So that's a big, long story. I think it's great. I love these stories. And again, that's my first time telling it because Yarn in the Barn has now become a challenge to find new stories to tell. And again, I'd love to do it as a live performance because I do a lot of jumping around and heising and kind of at people. But someday that'll come around again and I hope you'll be there to watch. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you in the morning around 8:20. It might be 8. But, oh Lord God almighty, whatever the sweetness is in my beard. Whatever sweetness is in my beard. Now, lads, have a lovely week. Go raibh maith go bhar fad, slán and ish. Thank you ever so much. And we'll talk to you then. Good girl.